I'm Dr. Rachel Dickinson, and I'm the program leader for English literature, but I've also recently become a principal lecturer in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies, and that's really with the portfolio for research and knowledge exchange, and has really quite a wide range of responsibilities beneath it. So things like I'm the research coordinator for my department, the research degrees and postgraduate student coordinator for the department. I sit on lots of committees and meetings, and I'm involved in the departmental management group, that is the DMG, and also do things like teaching still and research still, and all of that rolled into one parcel. I think what I like best about this role is beginning to have a bit more of a say in shaping what the department I work in looks like, and stemming from that, not just the department, to the faculty, to the institution. I think there's a nice sense, as you're shifting to principal lectureship from senior lectureship, that you are taking on more of a planning and policy and also a bit of sort of management responsibility in the midst of things. And I like that sense of being able to shape and help, I suppose, take control of things. MMU offers a fair bit of support for staff. There's a lot of different training programs, and I have to admit there are several that I'm planning to take, but so far this term, and I guess I'm 6 months into this new post, so 6 months in, I've really not had time to do much training at all. I've just begun to do one on postgraduate supervision, having already done the initial training on that and a refresher on that. I'm now doing a more in-depth, longer term, sort of once a week for about 4 weeks with an assessment at the end. And that relates to my role as postgraduate student coordinator for the department and looking after our research students, but also in terms of just career development in getting fuller training on supervising. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, but there are others that are more directly geared towards principal lectureships. So there's one called something like academic leadership that, again, I'm going to be planning to take in future, but simply haven't had time to do yet. Before being a principal lecturer, I had been a senior lecturer in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies here for about 5 years. And part of my role as a senior lecturer was also being a subject and program leader. And in many ways, that gave me the experience in areas, and I suppose actually skill sets in some ways, to transition towards becoming a principal lecturer. Before being a senior lecturer here, I had been a research associate on a postdoctoral program at Lancaster University, researching John Ruskin, and before that I'd done a PhD on Ruskin. Prior to that, if you want to go back even further in time, I'd been teaching at a small Canadian university in Canada with just a master's degree, and decided to go to the UK to get a PhD, and here I am still. I think the skill you need most to do this role is the ability to juggle your diary and time management skills. There's always going to be more tasks to do than you can possibly fit into a day, or indeed into a given week. And so there's an element of, I was going to say triage, which perhaps sounds a bit too extreme, but an element of assessing what needs to happen first and doing the essential things. So the best thing about working at MMU, for me, one of the best things about being here is the Cheshire campus. I'm somebody who isn't that keen on spending a lot of times in an urban city environment, and so being on the Cheshire campus, which feels more like a village, where you see the same people over and over again, we look outside our windows and see trees and green grass. I like that. And so for me, as a campus, this works really well, and is something that I would say is a real benefit of working at MMU. So at MMU, there's a sense that everything is changing. We have over the last few years and are moving into a period of, I think, exciting change. MMU is repositioning itself in terms of student satisfaction and in terms of how it's being viewed in the national media, becoming one of the big up-and-coming great improvers in terms of satisfaction. That yields real potential. It's also becoming much more committed to research than it had been. And for those of us who are committed to doing research, that's a fantastic thing. And so for me, it's those possibilities. MMU is a place where there is scope to carve out a space for yourself, carve out what you think is going to be useful for your career, but also for the institution, and see those go hand in hand. I think the other thing I really like about MMU is the kind of students that we historically have and continue to bring in. We have been a widening participation institution, and I think that's so important in our culture. We need to be keeping doors open for students, welcoming them from a variety of backgrounds, and helping them to meet their potential and really figure out what they're able to do. And MMU has been really good at that. Certainly my department, the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies, has been very good at that. And I take a lot of joy in doing that with my students. That's not really part of the principal lectureship role, and in fact that's part of what I'm doing less and less of as I'm doing less teaching now, but it's still an important part of who we are as an institution. The teaching environment at MMU is very collegial. As staff, we actually get along reasonably well together and are, I suppose, united in a commitment to supporting our students. We spend a lot of time with our students, and certainly in my department, where we have small sections of typically, say, 3 or 4 people teaching in a given area, it means you get to know your students very well because they're really only interacting with a few staff members. And although that might not be the best thing for all staff or all students, I think for many of us who come here, that's part of what we really enjoy. It's that community atmosphere of working together. And so that's a large part of our teaching ethos, is that supporting of the students. Since I've been at MMU, I've taken advantage of a few research opportunities. I was lucky to have a sabbatical approved for about a year ago for 1 term. And I used that time to put on a major exhibition at the Ruskin Library in Lancaster, at Lancaster University, on John Ruskin and textiles. In fact, it was the first ever exhibition on John Ruskin and textiles and dress, which might not sound that exciting to most people, but for someone like me who is a Ruskinian, Ruskin is most of what I study, that was a lovely opportunity. In the time I've been at MMU, I've also been interviewed a couple of times by BBC Radio. So took part in a Making History programme a couple of years ago, and this spring was interviewed by BBC Radio Scotland for a couple of days, both about John Ruskin. But again, those are research opportunities, and the joy of being able to share to a wider non-academic audience what I do and why what I research matters is a fantastic thing. And again, that possibility has been here in the time I've been at MMU.